Wolfpack, what's going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street, rotostreetjournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves here with your week 3 waiver wire action. Let's dive right into it with some pickups that could definitely help you swing your league. Now, just looking as an overview at this week's waiver wire, it is definitely top heavy, but there are a good 3 to 5 players I'd consider burning that number one priority for, tossing $20 to $30 on. So we'll give you all of those names. We'll give you a couple guys to make sure you check. And as always, we'll wrap up with a few defensive streamers. So buckle on in, Wolfpack. Let me know what questions you have. Full disclosure, I feel horrible right now. I had to call out of work today. Still not feeling great. So I don't know if I'll be able to get to all the questions, but I appreciate you being here, listening to my top 10 guys. I'll try to make it through at least a handful of them. But this is tough already. So thanks again so much, though. I already see the thumbs up button coming on in there. It is so greatly appreciated. Let's dive in. The first names to check. I'm seeing Tua out there in a lot of leagues. I think he got cut after a 14-point week 1 against the Pats. Didn't look great. Follows it up with 468 yards, 6 touchdowns, right around 40 points, depending on your scoring settings. That's the upside this guy has in potential shootout games, such as Buffalo this week. Now, that defense is certainly a lot stronger, Buffalo's, than the Ravens, and they're just completely depleted secondary. Still, those two weapons, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, combining for over 30 targets on the day. Clearly, Mike McDaniels knows what he's doing. He knows how to get the ball to his playmakers. It wasn't just dink and dunk either. Tua was dropping some dimes into the breadbasket of these nice weapons. So I would 100% recommend check out Tua if you're quarterback needy. Maybe you lost Trey Lance. Maybe you've been dealing with Russell Wilson being a complete shithead. Whatever it might be. If you need a quarterback, double check Tua and see if he's there. I would bet about $20, $30 potentially to get my quarterback that could be a legitimately locked-in QB1 the rest of the year. And also Curtis Samuel, only 70% rostered. So again, probably gone in your leagues, but 15 and then 19 fantasy points across his first 2 weeks. Tons of usage, 11 and 9 targets, 6 carries. He is a clear focal point of this offense, and he gets the high percentage look, so you know he's going to be racking up if you play PPR or half PPR, multiple catches each and every week, a playmaker with the ball in his hands, and they are just peppering it to him to get that ball out to him. So check if Curtis Samuel has not yet been picked up. I think he's a rock-solid wide receiver 3 with really top 24 wide receiver upside. Last time he played a full season, 2020, he was the wide receiver 25 and had only was out-touched only by Stephon Diggs, which is just wild, given all the carries and targets that he saw. But let's dive into now the guys that are at least 50% or fewer rostered out there, starting with Garrett Wilson. He had a whopping 14 targets, 25% rostered on Yahoo right now. And I know on ESPN he's like 69, so it really depends where you play if this guy's going to be out there or not. But 25% rostered on Yahoo, definitely an oversight by a lot of drafters, including myself. For him to be out there, he should not be out there in any leagues. Clearly, catches 8 balls, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns in an insane comeback win for the Jets against the Browns. It's tricky because he ran the fewest routes. He did tie Corey Davis with 36 routes of the top 3 wide receivers, but he only played 61% of the snaps. Still, when he's running routes, that's kind of wild to run about 65% of the routes and then see 14 targets, which was a whopping over 32% target share for the guy. So unbelievable performance from him, and just from the eyeball test, the kid's clearly got it. He was my number 1 wide receiver entering this class. I didn't love the landing spot because I don't love Zach Wilson, but as long as Joe Flacco's there, it's clear this guy's going to be producing. He's got the apple of Joe Flacco's eyes. He's lining up in the slot a bit, 21 slot snaps, although he was significantly better when he was lined up outside. 16 snaps outside, hauls in 10 of his 16, gets targeted 10 times on the 16. Unbelievable 5.19 yards per route run from the outside. The guy just can get it done. The questions, of course, what happens when Zach Wilson comes back? Is he going to overtake Corey Davis, a great run blocker in his own right, as the clear number 2 and become a closer to 100% snap player? Big questions, but certainly worth blowing $30-$40 to find out. The guy has the look of a true league winner. Mike Tannenbaum called him the next Justin Jefferson when he came on our podcast over the summer. And that's the flashes we're getting here, when Jefferson didn't play 100% of the snaps as a rookie to start, but just kept making play after play until they had no choice but to get him on the field more often. That could be Garrett Wilson this year. Another rookie, insanely impressive, maybe even safer, dare I say, is Jahan Dotson. This is your last call on him. We talked about him last week as a top 3 pickup, 44% rostered, so still out there in a ton of leagues. He hauls in only five targets, but hauls in 4 of them for 59 and a score, continuing that trend of being hyper efficient with the work he gets, which makes me imagine the work is just going to continue to go up and up and up for this guy. 16 and 15.9 fantasy points across his first 2 weeks on, again, just 5 targets a game. I mean, yes, that's a concern in that sense that he's only seeing about 12% of the targets, but the work he's doing with those will dictate more come his way. He also is on the field for 98% of the snaps, the highest of the team. Carson Wentz clearly likes this guy, especially as a red zone weapon. I love Jahan Dotson. I have Garrett Wilson just slightly higher, but man, it wouldn't shock me at all if Dotson's the guy with a clear locked-in role in 98% of the snaps that ends up being the more valuable of these 2 rookie receivers. Another guy worth 30, maybe even $40 if you're desperate at wide receiver. Now, if you need safety, not quite the upside of those 2 rookies, but Jakobi Meyers, a whopping 13 targets, well over 30% share, only owned in 36% of Yahoo leagues. He also had 9 catches for 95 yards. It's so clear. If you're a Pats fan, if you watch any of the game as I am, this is the guy that Max is looking for each and every time. It was that way last year. It has remained that way in 2022, even with this new offensive regime. Myers is still the guy. So ultimately, this was one of the best possible matchups. The slot corner of the Steelers is just absolutely abysmal. Someone to target every single week in DFS or a sit-start stream type of situation. But either way, Myers clearly has the trust of his QB, clearly is going to go off down the nice, safe wide receiver 3 type of guy. Moving to running backs, and those 3 receivers definitely my top priorities. Myers, again, a bit less so than running backs, 10 to 15%. I'd say 15 be the max I'd spend on him just because the ceiling is capped given he doesn't score touchdowns. But some running back help if you need it, particularly if you lost James Conner. It's not considered serious or long-term. It was the report from Ian Rappaport, but could miss some time. And we just know the guy historically, James Conner, has missed plenty of time throughout his career. When he got out, Darrel Williams and Eno Benjamin split the snaps pretty much down the middle, 31 going to Eno, 32 going to Darrel Williams. But what was impressive, and the reason I would prefer Darrel Williams, as you guys can see here, 8 goal line carries went to him. He also ripped off the longest yard run of the day with a nice 30-yard scamper to start the overtime. He was moving into the slot, kind of all over the place. And don't forget that this guy last year, when he had to fill in for CEH, Darrel Williams, racked up over 1,000 scrimmage yards, 8 touchdowns across 191 touches, was a top 12 running back in over half of his starts. I mean, the guy can get it done for sure. So I really like Darrel Williams. He's clearly more proven on the NFL field, but they do Cardinals, one who involved Eno Benjamin, 11% rostered right now. He had 8 carries for 31 yards, also had 3 receptions for 20. That kind of dates back. What was shocking is how this became such a near even split because Eno was the first man up in week 1 to rotate in to spell Conner. We didn't even see Darrel Williams play a snap. That was obviously not the case here. So it seems to me that Eno Benjamin has a more locked-in role than we'd expect. I do think he'd get kind of like the Chase Edmonds work, whereas we'd see the Conner type of work, the goal line carries, occasional receptions going to Darrel Williams. Both guys worth an ad, though, as we figure out what's happening with James Conner and his ankle. And even if it's all good and he's playing, still nice handcuffs to have on the bench in this explosive offense. Raheem Mostert, 44% rostered, shockingly out carries, out produces Chase Edmonds. Did not see that one coming. Big Edmonds fan after week 1. Thought, locked into 65% of the snaps and workload. And then bam, we get 11 carries for 51 yards to Mostert, while he also catches 3 passes for 28 yards, seeing more receptions than Chase Edmonds in this game. That was really the concerning part if you're a Chase Edmonds fan. We got both goal line carries also going to Raheem Mostert. Didn't convert any, but still got the usage there. Now, 2-minute drill, all went to Chase Edmonds. All but 2 of the 8 third down snaps went to Chase Edmonds as well. So clearly the locked-in pass catching back here, but much more of a committee than we expected early on based on last week. Could be shenanigans because this is where Mike McDaniels comes from. Maybe every week it's different and they're playing matchups and who knows. But either way, somebody getting, double-digit carries, multiple targets a game at the running back position, well worth $10-ish of your FAAB money. Now, before we get into the rest of the names on your Week 3 waiver wire, we do want to shout out our sponsor, as you can see up there in the corner, No House Advantage. They're changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play in pick'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning $250K plus in cash. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot to win big money every day. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20 extra entry if you hit all your picks. Bet on up to 5 player prop over-unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, MLB, NBA, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up with promo code RSJ at nohouseadvantage.com or download the app on the app stores to get your first deposit matched up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today. Experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You don't want to miss out on this. And I've mentioned it many times. Their contests still only about half full as you go through them each and every night. Tons of overlay, tons of potential money up for grabs. Check out No House Advantage. Use code RSJ or check out the link in the description. All righty, moving on to the final 10 waiver wire pickups. Jordan Mason at 5% rostered. If you saw last week's episode, we had Grant Cohen, one of my favorite beat writers for the 49ers and just in general. Love the guy. Come on. And he told us his take was Jordan Mason is going to ultimately be the one that comes in, takes over the backfield. Now, that did not happen in this past week. We saw Jeff Wilson operate as the near every down back, other than, of course, Tyrion Davis-Price seeing 14 carries of their 32 total rushing attempts in week 2. But now he's hurt. Davis-Price is going to miss at least a few weeks, they're saying. And so the wide open number 2 job, 12 to 14 carries might be all Jordan Mason needs to make a huge splash. He was looking like the best interior runner over the preseason. 19 carries, 94 yards, nice near 5 yards a pop on this guy. He kind of just feels like the Shanny, the undrafted, like feel-good story that Shanahan always loves to promote and pump up. So I really like Jordan Mason as a stash. Let's see how he does. Let's see how involved he is. Does this become the Jeff Wilson show? And never mind the fact that Jeff Wilson has never played more than 12 games in a season. So if something happens, Mason could shoot to the moon as the feature back. And now that Trey Lance is hurt, prayers up to him. Hope he gets a speedy recovery. But this offense is definitely much more appealing with Jimmy G in terms of the fantasy prospects, because Trey Lance just doesn't throw the running backs as much, steals the goal line carries, all that good stuff. As a stash, Rachaad White, only 34% rostered right now. I think he is the most valuable, among the most valuable, at least handcuffs in fantasy football. Impatient owners may have dropped him in your leagues, or maybe you just didn't get drafted. Definitely go check this out. Through 2 weeks, the Bucs actually have the 3rd lowest pass rate. Shocking. And I expect that to change. But either way, they are absolutely, pounding the rock with Lenny Fournette. He's seen 84% of the carry, so it's not like you can pick up White and toss him in there and expect any type of production. This is the Lenny show, but Lenny has missed 3+ games in all but one of his 5 professional seasons. And White is an insane pass catcher. I mean, he ranked with like McCaffrey, Eckler, Kamara in his college yards per route run, all those predictive efficiency metrics. This guy was also labeled a clear 3-down back by the GM when they picked him. To me, it just reminds me a lot of like David Johnson, who played under this regime and got fed a 3-down workload after we saw Chris Johnson go out. This kind of reminds me of that situation. Lenny doing solid, not giving up the job, but if something happens to him, I could really see White being an every week top 12 running back. Certainly well worth any bench space that might be out there. Sterling Shepard, one of my favorites always, unsexy, but man, he just gets it done. 11% rostered, sees a whopping 10 targets, over 30% share on Sunday, hauls in 6 of them for 34. Final counting stats, not all that great, but it's the health that you see. The guy's coming off an Achilles tear really not that long ago and looks every bit of his old self. We're also seeing Tony not play. We're seeing Galladay see 2 snaps. What a piece of shit that guy is. Ultimately, Sterling Shepard, though, is the clear-cut number 1, in my opinion, of this offense. Now, Wandale's been out. I wonder how that impacts things if and when he comes back. But don't forget, Sterling Shepard has a great rapport with Daniel Jones across his last 5 games before tearing his Achilles. 8 catches, 112 and a TD, the wide receiver 4. 9 catches, 77 yards, a TD, the wide receiver 11. 7 catches, 113 yards, 1 TD, the wide receiver 8. 9 catches, 94, and a wide receiver 21 finish. 10 catches, 76, a wide receiver 19 finish, seeing double-digit targets in all but one of those games. I mean, he is a hog. We're seeing it all over again out there in almost all your leagues. So check out Sterling Shepard if you need just some steady wide receiver help. Last couple names here, Logan Thomas at tight end, as well as Evan Engram if you need some tight end help. Both these guys becoming big pieces of their offense. We knew Logan Thomas, once he was healthy, would be a big piece based on the fact that he was almost an every snap player just 2 years ago. Was a top, heralded as a top 6 tight end entering 2 seasons ago. And he's looking like he's rounding back into form. 3 catches, 37 yards, and a score. Was one of the top 10 tight ends of the week. He did end up playing on 32 of 53 pass plays, running a route while all the other tight ends didn't even see a target. So it's clear to me that Logan Thomas in a tight end friendly offense has this role on lock, and that work's only going to increase. Of course, he's got Dotson and Samuel and, of course, Terry McLaurin there to contend with, so much more target competition than he's used to, but still nice potential. Just this offense looking good. Carson Wentz is moving the ball, and yeah, he'll have a couple duds and stinkers, but I think Thomas is definitely a top 10 worthy consideration moving forward at the tight end position, and as is Evan Engram, in my opinion. 21% rostered. He has now been participating in 80% of the routes in back-to-back games. He played 49 of 71 snaps, ran 26 routes, which trailed only Kirk and Marvin for the Jags. He's also being moved to the slot a bunch, 37% of his routes in the slot. Doug Peterson, top 5 tight end team totals in 80% of his seasons. He loves to pepper the position. Now, we haven't seen an insane game yet out of Evan Engram, but a nice, 8-target day, 7 catches, 40 yards. I mean, for the tight end position, you don't really find that work too often, so I'm a big fan of him. Now, if you need a quarterback, we didn't mention any quarterbacks yet, but Jared Goff is out there, only 22% rostered right now, puts up 26 fantasy points in week 2, thanks to 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. Well done, Jared Goff. I just love this Lions team. And I mean, when he gets to throw to Amon-Ra St. Brown, just let him do his thing. It's kind of like Stafford benefiting from Kupp. It's honestly not too far off from that situation. Their defense does still suck. And I think this team is going to be in constant back and forth battles throughout the year. And Goff, just in his second year in the offense, seems so much more comfortable. You saw it if you watch Hard Knocks, how much this team loves him and really is committed to him throughout this year. So I really like Goff, especially starting this week against the Vikings. We just got bombarded by Jalen Hurts. And yeah, of course, a lot of that game, production came on the ground, but still, Hurts was slinging it deep on them all day. So I'm a big fan of Jared Goff moving forward. Defensive streamers for week 3. I'll start off with the Cowboys, only 42% rostered. They're getting a Giants team that, 2-0. I mean, they look impressive, but still, this is Daniel Jones we're talking about. He's overdue at this point for an implosion. That line is still mediocre. The tackle play has been significantly better this year, but in the interior, they can still be burned. Micah Parsons. I mean, anytime you have a Micah Parsons-led defense, you're going to have the potential to score any given week. They've held both Tampa and Cincy. I think both much stronger offenses than the Giants. 220 points, 8 sacks, and 1 interception throughout the first couple weeks. Wouldn't be shocked to see multiple interceptions this week on the awful Daniel Jones. So one of the teams I would like. They also have the lowest implied total of the week, the Cowboys versus Giants. So something to target there. Also Philadelphia, 12 points fantasy outing this last week, thanks to 3 interceptions on Kirk Cousins. I mean, Darius Slay's a real deal, locking down Justin Jefferson all game, only allowed 7 total points, 3 picks, as we mentioned, 2 sacks. Solid overall performance from this Philly team that now gets Carson Wentz. And sure, this Commanders team putting up points. They are moving the ball well, but they've still given up the 11th most points to fantasy defenses while they're facing bad secondaries, bad teams overall. It's kind of like the key off on your old QB, go crush this guy. They'll know all his tendencies. I think the Eagles smashed this week at only 33% rostered. Definitely a good defense to consider. The New York Giants, I know I said the Cowboys are a good defense. I actually don't hate the Giants on defense this week either. Again, that 2-0 start, they have allowed just 18 points per game, holding Baker Mayfield to 145 passing yards. Granted, Baker Mayfield sucks, and they've faced 2 pretty bad teams on offense so far. The Titans just like they have no pulse. But Dallas with Cooper Rush, I don't think they're that much better. They really struggled. They did move the ball on the ground okay, but they really struggled in pass protection. And I do think this Giants defensive unit has a bit more of a rush presence than they have in the recent seasons. Again, 39.5 over-under total. If you need a complete Hail Mary at only 7% rostered, that's a team to consider. And the last defensive streamer I'll give you is the Falcons. Surprisingly, a top 10 fantasy defense so far, even though they've given up a shitload of points, 31 to Atlanta in week 2 rather. But that's because they're opportunistic. They pick the ball well. They can score, as we saw against Matty Stafford last week. And I just think, ultimately, it's weird with defenses. Like, if they're too smothering and don't allow the team to really get going through the air, there's no shootout potential or anything of that nature, a lot of your fantasy points come from picks, and especially pick sixes. And so it's counterintuitive in a way, but oftentimes when the Falcons get allowing 58 points in their first 2 games, that often creates the atmosphere that will allow sacks, that will allow picks. So they're not safe. They're not all that sexy, but only 1% rostered and facing a abysmal Seattle team. I think they could absolutely. Geno Smith does protect the ball decently well, but sacks, whatever it might be, I think there can be some points to be had there. All righty, Wolfpack. Well, thank you again so much for tuning in to this waiver wire show. As mentioned at the top, I don't feel well. I'd love to answer your questions. I will 100% be live with the truth, and unless I just don't get better by Thursday. But man, I got to rest. I got to get myself back to 100%. So thank you for your understanding. I know a big part of the show is your questions, and you know I love to answer them each and every week. But man, I don't have it in me this week. I'm sorry. I've had to get missed work. So I'm going to bow out now. Thanks again so much for being here. You can hit me up at RotoStreetWolf on Twitter, though. I'll try to check some questions there. It might be a little easier for me. So thanks again so much for being here. Check out all our content at RotoStreetJournal.com, including my rankings, our trade value charts, all that good stuff. And a world full of fancy sheep. Be the wolf, guys. Later.